Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of the
Inside Bassmaster Podcast. We're back. Let's go.
for 2025. I'm your host, as usual, Ronnie Moore. Well, as usual, I say that, Kyle. We hadn't had a podcast since NAM, so it's been a little while. But when we do the podcast, me and you, we co-host. So Ronnie Moore here. That's Kyle, Jessie, and Kyle. We're kicking off 2025. A lot has happened in the last couple months in terms of figuring out, honestly, plans of what 2025 is going to look like. A lot of decisions were made at the end of the year, and both of us honestly needed a break. So I'm glad we took a hiatus. Sorry to the fans that love listening to the podcast. Brother, we had so much going on, and this was honestly the last thing that I wanted to do last year at the end of the year. So, completely honest, if it gets me in trouble, whatever. I've been in trouble plenty in the last year anyway. So, good break, but now we might as well start off the first episode of the podcast for 2025, the week where we have like every tournament. We kicked off last week with the Kayak series at Lake Havasu. Drew Gregory, of course, takes the victory there, flies out there, kind of gets a rod or two from some people, and just has a couple baits and is able to win Havasu. And now we're kicking off college, high school, and the Open this week, and we'll be into February before we know it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't just dip our toes into it to start the season. Like you said, I mean, the kayak tournament the first weekend was great. Obviously, out there in Arizona, and like you said, Drew Gregory has just been on a historic run, regardless what series you're following, in the kayak series. But and yeah, this weekend obviously got the college tournament going on down at the Harris Chain Open at Clarks Hill. Icy conditions, just been
We'll
chaos.
eventually get going, yes.
And then, yeah, right. Allegedly, it's going to happen.
Today
Uh,
is Thursday, January 23rd, the day that honestly was going to be the final day of the college event, but it's the day one and the final day of the college event. That 2 day event's now 1 day. The 3 day open is supposed to start today on Thursday. It is a 2 day event now with full field, like we were saying. So honestly, I don't know what the high school event's going to look like down at the Harris Chain in a couple days either. Like it could be a half-day event. Who knows? We just could really mess around. Good luck with Glenn figuring that out.
yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of chaos mixed in with it's already chaos having that many tournaments, from a coverage standpoint and all the logistics that go into having one tournament, and then you factor in having three, in the span of 4 or 5 days. It's definitely a lot to figure out. And then the weather, obviously, like you mentioned, that we've had in both locations has just been crazy. Historic snows and winter weather in the deep south on the Gulf. I mean, you're talking about I can't remember
Florida.
in my lifetime, which is not super old yet, but I can't remember a time that it snowed so much on the beach. Like, I don't remember it ever snowing on the beach. I definitely don't remember anybody talking about like 4 to 6 inches of snow in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's been pretty crazy weather, and naturally it would happen on the first weekend where we're loaded with tournaments. But nonetheless, excited to get back after it. And I know you probably feel the same.
Best made plans. Best made plans. They're like, I'll say this. Hank and Glenn do a great job. I don't think we have any business having tournaments in January. For one, we don't have enough of an off season to be fired back up to have events in January. Like, let's just be completely real with that. Uh, we've gone and moved the classic from February to March and have two elites before that. That's already pushing it. And there's a lot of logistics. And so I'm just saying, I'm not against it, but can you do us a favor and let's not do it? Like, can we, unless we're doing it in like Venezuela or something, or like Honduras or Cuba, like, I don't know if we can do a bass tournament there. That's the only guarantee, and there's no guarantee with that either. So, very hard to manage weather, especially timing it out. We had cold temperatures last year for the Clarks Hill College event. That was for one of the divisions of the college series. So this fishing is going to be great when it resumes and when it starts, but it's certainly a lot of logistical nightmares. Glenn's got the same thing, not necessarily snow and ice at the Harris Chain, but high winds and rain. And you have amateurs, you have young kids in the college series, high school series to be mindful of. When you get to the opens and elites, you can send them in a little bit worse weather and get away with it. But when it's inches of ice and snow, and then it's 18 degrees all the next day and nothing melts, I understand why you have to move it to a 2 day tournament. So, Glenn, Hank, if you're watching this podcast at some point, at the Waffle House, after takeoff. We don't hate you. We just, we either need a 13th month of the year,
Literally.
we need a 25th hour of the day, or we just gotta position these differently, because then in June, July, August, we'll be like, man, we've had one tournament this last 3 months, but it's because we
That,
did 19 before April, So I understand it. It is just very logistically hard. It puts our tournament directors in a hard spot. Do you
yeah.
postpone the first day of the year as these guys wait and are ready to go and they get disgruntled? Do you send them and have something bad happen? Because it seems like most of the bad things that happen navigationally and weather-wise happen the first event of the year. Years ago at Okeechobee and another trail had some bad stuff happen early in the year. You just don't want that stuff happening. So, um, for their benefit and for our benefit, because we're sitting here, we just finished up our FS1 recap shows. All those shows that air before the season starts, we just finished them up like January 15th. And you're like, we get to breathe for 3 days and then we got to prep for the open. And so it is a little bit difficult to manage.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you mentioned the 13th month of the year. That's really what we need more than anything. It always kind of cracks me up when people, it always happens at the final elite. You see all the same people on the road and it never fails. Like you get to the last elite and everybody asks you, "So what are you going to do in the off season?" And it's like, what off season? There is no off season. Like we celebrate Christmas, and that's about the extent of time off where there's not a lot going on. People obviously take a little bit of time off and enjoy the holidays, but yeah, it is certainly right back into it. And obviously there's events even that go into December with the team champ, and then yeah, you just jump back into it, and
And
you
I and
factor in.
I love Christmas, but I
Oh yeah,
hate that we take in the working world, we take the week of or the week before Christmas off, and then we take the New Year's week, after Christmas off. So if we didn't get our work done by December 18th, I'm not seeing you till January 3rd. And
yeah.
there's like I was remembering like, hey, is so and so sponsoring Tackle Tip Tuesday? Because the first day of the year is Tackle Tip, and I gotta like nobody's gonna be in the office the next 3 weeks. I need an answer right now. Like so.
It's a
It's
lot, and
you're
that's
like take your time, enjoy your vacations, but good Lord, let's hope so. Let's hope we're ahead at that point in the year.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, in this none of this is like complaining by any means. It's just
No,
the
it's just
challenges of
you're just. I
it's
feel like
just
I've been
the
running. Yeah.
yeah, it's just the challenges of getting the next season kicked off and to the point of like the whole off season conversation is like I've said this a dozen times or more this off season. I'm doing air quotes if you're listening on the podcast, but
It's just the
um
time between one season ending and one season starting.
and to me, it's worse in almost every way because there's more, I mean, there's arguably more to do in that like month span than there is like once the tournament gets rolling, everybody
No
kind
one
of
asks us during
rolls.
elite weeks
Yeah,
to do anything else
it's
but cover
just
the elite. Yeah.
you kind of know what's going on. You have the schedule, you understand everything that's going on. Like it's I wouldn't say it's easy. It's obviously a lot to manage, but yeah, the off season's the craziest because you just feel like the sand is going to end up on the other end of the hourglass and you're going to be out of time and it's going to be
Yeah.
like time to roll. And that certainly makes it challenging. So the fact that tournaments are starting to get kicked off, even despite all the challenges with the bad weather and everything, is kind of a bit of a relief in a way, if that makes sense. It sounds crazy to say, but it's honest.
For sure. And this, it's hard to tease the next episode when we're just doing our first episode in a couple months. But next episode, I think next week, Kyle, we should be with one and only Chase Anderson. And so we talked about the different, elite committee, schedule, info rules, electronics, regulations, all these different things. The co-angler modifications. A lot of things have changed over the last couple months, and honestly, nothing happens at Bass unless it goes through Chase. And so, Chase wanted to get on the podcast and be able to chat with us about everything, anything and everything that has changed, and maybe reasons why. And so, in the next episode, we will be talking about that before we kick off the elite season in future podcasts. So, that is one that you'll want to listen to. So, Kyle, before we get too far into this episode of the podcast, I did want to let some viewers know content wise. Great content coming to Bassmaster.com. Great content coming to all our social channels and to our YouTube channel, which I run and operate. We have so much content though, so many trails, so many tournaments, more live coverage, more podcasts, all the different things that we have made a second YouTube channel. It's called Bonus. It's called Bassmaster Bonus. It's a gold bass shield. Go check it out. We've made a community post on our other Bassmaster platforms to promo this. That's where a lot of weigh-in feeds are going, a lot of other moments. When we get in the heat of tournament season, when we have a lot of content, some stuff gets cut and we can't post it. Instead of throwing it in the trash or doing it 2 or 3 weeks later, there is now another vessel, another place that it can go. But we need you to subscribe to that channel and let's start building that channel up like we've built the Bassmaster channel from the ground up, and it has started to really flourish the last couple years. Let's get that one steaming ahead for the 2025 tournament season. Kayak, college, opens, elite, high school, nation, team, juniors, redfish, all 10 Bassmaster trails are all going to be represented there in some form or fashion. So make sure you get over to the Bassmaster. Oh, is this thing on? Get over to the Bassmaster Bonus YouTube channel, subscribe to that, and you won't miss a single bit of our content as we up the ante more and more. We talked about it. Drew Gregory winning the kayak series. We've got the college event that is happening right now. Weigh-in should be starting in the next 30 minutes to an hour for the first flight. We'll crown our first leg of the college series champion. Next week, that college series, the other division will be at Lake Okeechobee down in Florida. So every single college angler that means something is in Florida, like within a week and a half of each other, because you'll have one full field at Harris Chain that's wrapping up today, one full field that will be getting to Okeechobee for practice starting this weekend. So we've got that Clarks Hill 2-day event, full field. The opens this year a little bit different. We'll talk about those changes with Chase, but uh, structure wise, instead of having three divisions, but really one full series. You know, we had Division 1, 2, and 3 last year that were South, Central, North, that type of deal. We've now got two divisions. And instead of having an overall EQ points race for the 8 or 9 events for the whole season, you've got just a different way of advancing. And so the opens, starting here at Clarks Hill for Division 1, we will have about 150 to 170 anglers fishing this division. They fish 4 events: Clarks Hill, Tom Bigby River, Upper Chesapeake, and St. Lawrence River. The top 50 in the points race for that division will advance to the EQ portion. And the EQ is the Tackle Warehouse Elite Qualifier Points Race, which will be a 3-event shootout, which we also now know what those lakes will be. The next division of the Opens, which will be the next live event we do, we kick off 2 Opens before we kick off the Elites. The first event of Division 2 is Sam Rayburn. Then we have Kentucky Lake, Norfolk Lake here in Arkansas, and then we have Leech Lake. So we've got 4 events each division. You're in the top 50 in the points race of those 4 events, Kyle. You advance to the EQ portion where those 100 anglers max will face off with also maybe speculating, maybe like 50 Elite Series pros that are either not in the Classic or have failed to requalify for next season, and they'll be able to fish the EQs for 3 Classic spots and then also for 10 EQ qualifying spots to the Elite Series. So a couple changes there. Those 3 events at the end of the year, you kind of got them regionally. You got one up north. You got one kind of, I guess, centralized, even though it's Alabama. It's Northwest Alabama. And then you have Florida represented. So we have Lake Champlain mid-September. Early October is going to be Pickwick Lake. And then mid-November is Okeechobee. So we'll be wrapped up around the same time we normally are, with that last event declaring 10 new spots possibly to the Elite Series for the Opens. And so they get an extra spot in the Elite Series, and they also get 2 additional spots in the Classic. We'll have 11 Classic spots for the Opens this year, and we'll have 10 qualifying spots to the Elite Series. So a couple little changes there logistically. And Opens, I believe we're covering most of them live. I know that there's one in each division right now that we're not covering live, I think for balance sake and for conflictions. We've got a lot of other projects we do as well. So there'll be one event in each division that we won't cover live. It seems right now, and I'd expect those last 3 to be good ones as well.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the changes I'm really looking forward to, because you get later into the year as it is, and I'm saying this as a fan. I'm not somebody that works for Bass, but you get later into the year and the tournaments do start to slow down. They, as we alluded to earlier, they certainly don't end. We still have all sorts of events, but the
Just one off
opens.
here and there, one
Yeah,
off here and
right,
there.
right. Like a tournament in September and then, an open in September, maybe early October. Being able to have the EQs, kick off in September and go for 3 months, like that's going to be awesome to be able to follow that, cover that the same way that we would, Elite Series tournaments in a lot of ways, and be able to really emphasize that points race to make it to the elites. Obviously, the way it's been set up in the past few years, we've been able to do that to a degree, but also you're still covering the tournaments, to those three tournaments, like that's the goal. Obviously you want to win them just because if you're fishing a tournament, you want to win, but like qualifying for those, or for the Elite Series from those three tournaments is going to create so much drama and so much, pressure, down towards the end of the year, which again, just as a fan, I'm looking forward to a lot because we'll be able to put so much emphasis on it coverage wise. It'll be, elevated highly there. And then, another thing to your point that I want to mention is, the way that the schedule's set up, and this is not coming from anybody at Bass. This is again coming from somebody that's a fan of the sport. One of the complaints, and granted, if we just wanted to get on here and talk about complaints, we wouldn't have enough time to
Plenty.
possibly
There's plenty of other
podcast.
podcasts out there for that.
Yeah, but was that I saw whenever the EQ schedule came out was like, well, thank God they're all over the place as far as like locations are concerned. Well, it's like these three tournaments are determining who fishes the Elite Series. If we had three tournaments in Alabama, that would defeat the purpose entirely because you've got 100 anglers fishing in these EQ tournaments, and let's say 7 out of the 10 qualify, and they're all Alabama or local to this area. Well, that defeats the whole purpose. That's kind of the whole reason, well, one of the reasons, I guess, went away from the divisional elite qualifiers because if you have two tournaments in Oklahoma in the Centrals and somebody
One in
qualifies
Louisiana, you're an
right, and
Oklahoma guy, yeah.
it gives a massive advantage to certain people.
I'll
Well,
say it,
just from
Kyle.
a
You're
competition,
I'm nice and you're nice, but you're nicer than me most times. If you knew, which we announced that we would have one event in September, one in October, one in November, you have to be an idiot, absolute IDIOT idiot, if you didn't think that one could still be up north because September's that weather.
sure.
Yeah, like that's the last month you can fish up north with tournaments without maybe losing multiple days. October, you could do one in that Missouri, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee, Northern Alabama region, maybe North Carolina, South Carolina over there. And then November, you're going to fish in Florida. We don't have another event on the schedule in the opens in Florida. We probably will have one in Florida. You, I mean, let's use some deductive reasoning here. Like I'm not saying fishing people are scholars at all. You take that how you take it. But you got to use your common sense there. Like, come on, we're not going to go to Florida in September and then North Carolina in October, and then we're going to go to, you know, Minnesota in November. We're not doing it. There was. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm right there with you on that. But yeah, I mean, that's to me, that's the best case scenario for finding the 10 most balanced elite qualifiers. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the
And
same way that that it's been beforehand. Like if you qualified through the elite qualifiers the last year, you had to do it through a schedule that had a great amount of diversity. Well, in three tournaments, it's harder to get a lot of diversity because it's a much smaller sample size. Well, putting them, like you said, a northern swing tournament early in the year, a little further south in October and then further south in November. I think and I'm not even kidding when I say this. I didn't know what that schedule was until the day that we announced it, just like everybody else. So when I saw it, I was like, that's great. Like you at least get as much diversity as you possibly can in three tournaments. Like
I
that's
knew one of the
a lot
lakes,
of ways.
and it wasn't even on there because the host backed out. And I was like, Hank, I thought we were going to have the really cool, never been to before place. He's like, dude, they backed out. And I was like, dang, that would have been super cool. So with that's still in his back pocket or front pocket since I'm doing this gesture. Um, Also, I love the four events in each division. You've got all three species of bass represented. Most likely, you'll have to catch largemouth, at Rayburn, Kentucky Lake. You're going to also have smallmouth at Kentucky Lake. You'll have it at Leech Lake. Norfolk will probably, you'll see all three species probably come into play at times. Clark's Hill, you'll have largemouth spotted bass. Upper Chesapeake, largemouth. You've got Tom Bigby, largemouth, probably spots there as well. And then smallmouth at the St. Lawrence. So both divisions have it. And then when you do the EQs, you're going to see mixed bags at Pickwick. You'll see obviously smallmouth and largemouth at Champlain, and then you're going to have largemouth at Okeechobee. So that's the opens. Excited for that. And I'll also say the EQ roster, that lineup for those final three events, we say it all the time, but hang with me here. If it's 150, it will be the strongest 150 person field in the history of bass tournaments. Okay? Because you'll have the top 50 in each division opens wise, which looking at the names of the guys, a lot of young blood, a lot of old blood, a lot of really skilled blood in those divisions. You're going to have 50 in each of them. Shut up, Kyle. You're going
This
to
is
have
getting
50
boring.
It's the opens, there's fist fights at the lock. You just never know.
Cutthroat.
So you're going to have really diverse, great group, 50 anglers from each division. There's 100. And then you're going to have Elite Series pros that are basically saying, if you want my spot on the Elite Series, come get it from me specific. Come see me. Come see me if you want to take my spot. So that's got to be a group of anglers that's going to be such a great field of anglers. So that'll be something, a story to tell there. And people who are like, well, in past years, if you were in 50th, you probably weren't qualifying. True, but at this stage in the year, I remember Tyler Williams and Ben Milliken were like 25th to 28th in points, and with three events left, and they had a great three events, and they made the top nine. So if top 50 gets you there, we reset it to zero. Here's a three event shootout. My question to you, Kyle, is what's the lowest you can finish at that Lake Champlain event and still be able to make the elites in the top 10 with Pickwick? And if we have a 150 boat field, even if we had a 100 boat field, well, 100 changes a little, but if we had a 150 boat field, where can you finish at Champlain and still make the top 10 in points after Pickwick and Okeechobee? That'll be the interesting
You
thing.
always ask me these questions, and I'm not
I,
giving it any thought, and I don't even know where to start. When you factor in if it was 150, you're suggesting how many would be current elite guys?
I think
Like
50. Yeah,
50?
like 50. I think, half the field would for various reasons. Some want
So
to
I
just
mean, you
fish,
got to
some need to make the
factor in,
classic, some
yeah,
want to
you got to
requalify.
factor in you're not necessarily fishing against those guys as far as the points are concerned, I suppose, unless it's guys that are, trying to requalify, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna say, I mean, we're gonna shoot it right in the middle. We're gonna say like somewhere in the 60s, I guess.
Really? See, I don't even think you can finish 50th. I think you're gonna have to be in the top 50
Well, I
in the
mean, if you
first
finish
one.
60th and then you finish first and first,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I
what could
mean,
you possibly do? I
but
mean, it's definitely
that's a
possible.
62 for three events. That's a 21 average. That might get you ninth.
I mean,
That,
I don't know. I have
that
no
might
idea.
slide you in there.
All I
It'll be
know is
something.
that
Well, that'll be good fodder we can think about till September.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay, I'm saying if you finish 60th, okay, if you finish in the 60s and then there's 20, I think these numbers are all messed up. But I think if you had 15, if you had 15 guys from 60th to first that were current elite guys, then you're factoring them out. So you're finished in that tournament.
Yeah, but that's not always the case. I have to look and see, and I should know this, but I'll look and see if someone who is in good standing in the Elite Series ends up in the top 10 in points. I'm assuming we skip them like we did with Kenta. I'm
That's what I'm
assuming we
saying.
skipped them, and so yeah, but like either way it works out. You're going to be one of the first 10, or if they weren't in the field, you'd make it. If they were in the
Look,
field,
I'm
you'd
not
make
I'm
it. Yeah.
not betting against the current elite guys. I think if they're fishing it, they're going to do pretty well. Just because they tend to do that. So, if that was the case and you finish 60, like I said, I would put my money on if you say there's 50 elite guys fishing it, which I don't know that would be accurate, but we'll see. I'm guessing at least 10 of them are going to be inside the top 60. So I mean,
I
you're
mean,
skipping.
I say 50 because if top 42 make the classic, you'd be an IDIOT if you didn't fish it and you were 43rd or 44th in the, like you're just hoping someone does your job for you. I feel like that's like, hey, here's three chances to make the classic. You better get in on them. And sorry, you can't go shoot two deer. You're gonna have to
Well, I was
shoot
about to
one deer
say
this year.
the deer aren't gonna shoot themselves, Ronnie. I mean,
Yeah, and the
what
deer don't
are
pay
we
the bills either. We'll just be honest about that. There's way too many people who don't treat bass fishing as their career when it comes to hunting, and hunting doesn't pay no bills for them. We'll just say that. But I think we covered the ground for the opens right now. We're going to talk, I believe, about the new group of rookies about to make their debut on the elites very soon, and some fantasy fishing involved as well. But before we do, Kyle, what have you been getting into the last 2 or 3 months? Because we text and talk as much as we can. At times, it's about business, which means it's not fun texts. But then when we get on the podcast, we can have fun and laugh. But we hadn't done podcasts, so like, where you
been a
been? I
minute.
know you came through to Arkansas once or twice and didn't even text me, so really appreciate that, dog.
Came home for Christmas. I figure you would be just as busy as I
I
was.
am 2 minutes off the highway. You killing me, Smalls. It's
Yeah,
crazy,
well, you
crazy.
know. But I mean, you got to factor in too. We're driving through at like midnight when we're driving through. I mean, you got
I
young
got
ones.
two
I mean,
kids. I'm awake at midnight. You know how it is.
no shot. No shot. Um, yeah, I haven't been up to a whole lot, to be honest, as far as like fun stuff that we could talk about. And I think that's the honest truth. I've definitely been to some football games this fall. Went to a couple Razorback games, and then went to a Chiefs game in Atlanta. Been to some basketball games. I'm not going to go to any more basketball games if it's Razorback related because they're complete garbo.
Hey, they got a dub last
Yeah,
night against
one
Georgia.
one
We
single.
always start slow in conference. You know this. We've been to how many Elite Eights? Starting
Starting
0 and 3.
slow. Starting slow is one thing. Starting 0 and 5 in conference is another. That's digging a hole
I
that's
gotta
going
go
to be hard
look
to
and see what the
come out
what the
of.
boys Jalen Williams did a couple years ago. I think they were like 0 and 3, 0 and 4. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they were 0 and 3. I don't think they were 0 and 5. Yeah, so I mean just been doing some hanging, obviously spending time with the wife and then during the holidays, of course, spending time with family. So
you're a big
yeah,
concert goer. You guys go to a lot of concerts too, right?
um I don't know that I would say that. I think we've been to a couple concerts. I wouldn't
On a
say we're big
month, that's
concert
kind
goers.
of
I don't know.
25% of your month.
I don't even know if we went to one. We haven't been to one
Then
a
you
month.
go to you're a big Taylor Swift guy because you're a Chiefs fan,
Yeah,
and then
I am a
you
big
got
Taylor Swift fan.
Since you
Sure.
guys are tight at the celebrity tournament, all that stuff.
Yeah, we're boys for sure. I did go to a Co-Etzel concert. That was the same weekend as a Razorback football game and a Chiefs football game. So that was a packed weekend. And basically since then have just
Golly, I wish I had
using
your bankroll that weekend. That could not have been cheap.
using basically every bit of time between then and now. I've basically relaxed every weekend I possibly can, getting ready for the season. So in all seriousness, like the last 2 months outside of work, I've done a lot of just relaxing and trying to prepare for the season that awaits. So what about you? What have you been up to?
Well, I was doing anything and everything to not think about bass fishing because honestly, Kyle, you know me, it's like 11 years strong, and this was the first off season where I was absolutely burnt out with the sport of bass fishing. Was not really enjoying work too much, and that's just me being completely honest to the folks listening to the podcast. It was we do a lot. I mean, we pour so much of our time. We don't treat this as like an 8 to 5 job, Kyle. I know you don't. It's a 6:30. Something needs to be done. Most of our tournaments extend into the evenings, anyways, and so we devote a lot of our time to it. And so when it's not fun, like it wasn't at the end of the year last year, and how much divisiveness, how many just the amount of rude text I'd receive when I didn't even have anything to do with the decisions being made. Um, it was absolutely wild to see people's behaviors. And so it really turned me off from anything fishing. And so when people would say, how's work going? I'd be like, how's your job going? Because I want to talk about your job. What are you? You're a doctor, a lawyer? Give it to CPA. That sounds like fun, man. Tell me all about it. Because it was just a time. And I talked to Mike McKinnis. I talked to people around here at the office of like, I am going to make a concerted effort to when I'm not here to make sure that I'm giving my full attention to my girls and my wife, family and stuff like that. Because oftentimes I'm distracted. It's dad's there physically, but his laptop's on his lap and his daughter's on his other lap and the other one's bouncing in the bouncer there. Like I gotta put the laptop down and do family. But I also jumped in last summer. For those who follow me, I've been coaching basketball. So one of the boys that was in the youth group in 2018, 2019 at my church. He was I somewhat mentored him and we played basketball together. Then he's now coaching. He graduated high school, is now coaching basketball. So he's like, "Hey, you want to come coach with me?" It's like, "Of course, I'd want to come coach." But I never really I was thinking, of course, but I was like, I got to slow roll this tentatively. So Sarah is like, he's doing this out of the goodness of his heart, not because he really loves it. And now Sarah is now wise to Ronnie loves this. And honestly, if there was a salary to a high school basketball coach, I mean, I would do that the rest of my life. I love basketball. Like the only sport that comes close to fishing, and or I would say the only sport fishing comes close to for me is basketball. Basketball has always been my deal, especially since high school through college. That's my sport. I haven't watched a single snap of the NFL playoffs or honestly the college football playoffs. Like I didn't even watch a single snap of Ohio State Notre Dame. I didn't watch any of those deals. Just checking the scores on Twitter. But I've been coaching basketball, and it's a homeschool Christian organization. So it's all kids from homeschool in Little Rock region or surrounding cities not far from Little Rock, and they all come to Little Rock and we play basketball. It's a great opportunity to share my faith and minister to the boys in that way, but also teach them basketball, what they know about basketball, helping them get to the next level. We got a couple guys. We're in that 15 to 18-year-old age group. So we've got guys who are senior, three seniors will be, senior night's Friday. And so three of them are graduating. And we've got a really good group of juniors and sophomores. And so those boys have been, I got a couple that we're trying to get D1, that they probably can go D2. They could probably go JUCO and then go D1 later. But if they grew like 2 more inches, I'd be like, yeah, D1. But like, you got to be really good if you're their height right now at 6 foot, 6'1". But it's been fun. We went to Monroe, had a districts. So we've got obviously homeschool. You don't have too many options when it comes to scheduling opponents. So we've got like 5 or 6 homeschool organizations in Arkansas, that you would consider your conference schedule. And then we've scheduled a couple private schools, a couple public schools, and we've gone out of state for a couple little tournaments or like a little round robin deal in Louisiana where a couple schools came to and did it. And so it's been good. We've had like 25 games. We're right there at 500 or 24 games. We're at 12 and 12. But we've scheduled up, in talent, if we only counted conference games and because I don't even think public school and private school count, but I count them because if we're gonna lace them up, Kyle, and there's a score on the board, we're counting it.
Yeah.
And so I think we played it. We even played the JV team played varsity the other day for a private school. So not only did we play private, we played privates and varsity. Didn't go great, but we learned a lot and got us tougher. And so that's what it's preparing us for. And so we just got third at districts, lost to the number 1 seed by 3 points in the semis, and basically the winner of that game would have won the title. And so we got third in that tournament, and we've got states coming up in February, regionals in February, and then we have nationals in March. And so I'll actually tell everyone here, Kyle, I'm gonna miss the first event of the season at the St. John's for the elites. I'll come back. I believe I'll be back Sunday for live, but I'm gonna miss the first event because I'm going to go coach. Because I told Mike, I said, this means a lot to me. And there's only one conflict all season. And I just want to go ahead and do it. And so we're going to go coach regionals. And I basically told the boys, I said, how hard and how well we play in the last leg of the regular season will determine if I ask my boss off for work. And so they showed me what I wanted to see. And so excited. That's been really super cool. So they've kept me fired up when I could have just been bummed and frustrated with the offseason. So basketball, baby. And man, it's the coolest thing ever. Just like you are when you're a parent and someone's like, your kids are great. When a referee or another coach comes over to shake hands at the end of the game and says, you get your boys to play, man. They play and they don't give up. And I was like, absolutely. Like we never give up. We were down by 10 to the number 1 seed with 3 minutes left. And we had a shot to win at the end. And we just didn't get the steal. When we get the steal, make the three, it's a tie game. But we just didn't get the steal at the end. So very cool. Proud of the boys.
I will say this too. One thing I have got to do a lot this off season, probably should have mentioned that, is I've actually got to go bass fishing a lot, which is pretty standard for our schedule. like, obviously the
We get the
spring,
best months like
summer.
August and November and
Yeah.
December.
Yeah. The months that are really not that great for bass fishing is when we have time to go. So I've done a lot of bass fishing actually here in Alabama, and then in Arkansas when I was back for the holidays. So I probably should have mentioned that first, because in all seriousness, that's why I do this job and why I love this is because of bass fishing. And I've got to do more of it in the last, couple months than do during the season, but that's to be expected. So it's definitely worth noting. I've done some bass fishing, so that's probably also why I'm so fired up for the season to start, because I'm fiending for some bass fishing myself.
I gotta look. When was our last podcast? Because I mean we've covered a lot of life ground. Um, Let me see podcast. Let's see when our last episode aired. November 6th. Okay, so I was a month into that. For those who don't know, I had a second child in late September. So dad of two now. We got Marlo and Millie. And Kyle, I'll just say this. Millie, she's a freaking tank. She's a tank. Marlo, she's gonna be in 3 the week before the classic. Marlo will be. And she's at like 28, 29 pounds. We're gonna go in for Millie's 4 month checkup soon. And I'm pretty sure she's gonna be like 16, 17 pounds. She's like 2.5 years younger than Marlo and is gonna pass her in weight before she's 6 months old. Like Millie's a she's a freaking tank. That's all we can say. And so we definitely got Marlo as the string bean. She's gonna be the outside hitter, and Millie might be the libero in volleyball. So setting it up to big sis. Um, but yeah, let's get into it. Man, two really good friends of yours, I guess maybe more than that, qualified for the Elite Series in the Opens. We had a huge and good group of anglers, diversified as well in stature and seasonedness in the sport. Obviously, we had Easton Fothergill battling it out with Cody Meyer all season long. Tucker Smith right there with 2 seconds throughout the year, gets third in the points race. You got Paul Marks, Emil Wagner. Those guys are cut from the same cloth. Lake Lanier has basically taught them everything they know. And then you've got Andrew Loberg from the West Coast, like Cody Meyer. And then you've got Dakota Ebert. We know exactly. It was this time 1 week prior last year, January in the teens. I was in a Bible study. I got a phone call during our 5 minute intermission. It's Dakota Ebert. I answer him and he says, "Is it too late to get in the opens?" And I said, "Big dog, for you, I'll check." And talked to Hank Weldon. He says, "Tell Dakota to call him in the morning." Dakota calls him. Boom, he's in the open. A week and a half later, he leaves for Okeechobee. And a couple months later, he's now made the Elite Series and will be fishing that in hopes of making the Classic as well. That's one big goal that he mentioned over and over. Elite Series is great, but I want to fish tournaments that get me to the Classic. Dakota, you got your shot at the Classic coming up very soon with the Elite Series schedule the way it is. Then you've got the last two spots went to Bo Browning and Evan Kung. Great job by those guys. And they were locked up, I guess, like Zona would say, tighter than a drum in that last event with Matt Adams. Those three anglers, Bo Browning, Matt Adams, and Evan Kung, were all 5 points separated going into the last event. Matt Adams gets the short straw. He gets to be known as the first guy out, and he's back in Division One. He gets a chance to redeem that this year, and he's starting at Clarks Hill, obviously in the morning. But what a great group of 9 anglers. Blake Capps wins the Bass Nation at Grand Lake in his home state. He is our 10th guy making the Elite Series from overall. He gets to come from the nation. And we only have 8 rookies, though, coming into the season. We've got 7 of the Opens guys. Dakota Ebert, Cody Meyer, not rookies. And so we have 7 from the Opens and Blake Capps from the nation. 8 rookies next year. That'll be a great rookie class. And then we've got 2 legends that came in, Kyle. For those who are under a rock and we're the ones lifting the rock up, let the folks know. Let the folks know who the 2 legends are joining based on. And to be a legend, Kyle, it's if you've won an Angler of the Year or you've won a Bassmaster Classic. Those are the 2 things that give you Legends points. And then everyone's listed out in order of points, Legends points. If you're tied with someone, the tiebreakers are kind of like, are you currently fishing bass? That's the first deal. And then it's how many probably bass events you fished in your career.
Yeah, and to your point, we've got a couple of former classic winners in Randy Howell and Cliff Pace.
Back to
Uh,
back classic winners too.
yeah, will be joining us again on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and I've had the chance to talk to Randy a handful of times, and I can just tell you he is ecstatic to be back, and couldn't be any happier. You can just tell just listening to him how excited he is to get back and be fishing the Elite Series, and I know through the opens, obviously last year you kind of felt that way. With Cliff Pace, especially once that announcement was made that was the case, and certainly just as a fan of the sport, you're glad to see those guys back and trying to make it back to the Bassmaster Classic. So it should be really exciting as far as that's concerned.
I think Randy's excited because we texted a few times last year, and in March he said, "I'm looking forward to being with y'all again next year." He was already counting his roosters or counting his chickens before his eggs before they hatched, and then in August, and then in September, it's just it would basically be like, "Hey, here's the answer to your question. Also, I'm looking forward to being with you guys again next year." So Randy
He's pumped.
has been eagerly waiting, and then Cliff, man, Cliff, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He tells it like it is. There's a soundbite that I can't forget now because we interviewed him after an open last year and basically asked him what he thought of the changes Bass was making. If he thought they were good or bad. And the first thing he says is, yeah, well, when MLF started, Bass had to make some changes, so whatever. And so it's like a thanks, like that could be true, but just we don't normally word it like that, but cool. And so Cliff's always been a no sugar coat, tell it like it is. Do your business and go home. But great man of faith. I'm always intrigued at his crankbait building, and now he's pouring soft plastics. So maybe I can make it down one of those roads once they thaw in Mississippi and check out his space where he makes all that stuff happen for his crankbait company and his soft plastics and things like that. So he's a tweaker, he's a twiddler, and an adjuster. So he's probably got some custom things that no one's probably seen unless you've been in the boat with him. Plus, I think it's the craziest dynamic. Him and Tavin Dillard, like literally, like that's the last guy I'd expect to have like a comedian type friend with that would shoot videos. And so that's the most intriguing thing ever. I'm like, he's got some personality. He just is to himself, calm, cool, collected, and not going to show emotion. But when he's doing that, I always get a kick out of those little videos.
Yeah, they're very funny, and yeah, it's going to be fun to have those guys back, and then of course, like you mentioned, the elite class or the rookie class, coming in from the opens, and then Blake Caps through the nation. A lot to be excited about there. I mean, obviously the a lot of guys that have a lot of pedigree in the college series and have proven it over the years in that series, and after what the rookies did last year, it's hard
And the
not
year
to.
before.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, since we started the podcast, we've probably said this exact phrase. I'd say probably like 120 or more times, but like the rookies just keep getting better and better, and the classes just seem to keep getting more, productive and more, accomplished, I guess, over the years. And yeah, that's certainly not any different this year, and I can't imagine that they won't have a massive impact on this season, just like the guys last year did, and like you said, the year before, and so on and so forth. But I'm really excited to see what they can do. Just the entire field, top to bottom, when you look at the entire roster, is so competitive. It's like when you look at it, you're like, who's gonna be, for a fantasy fishing sake, who's gonna be in bucket E? Like, who's gonna even like? How is that bucket? Like, it's such a strong field that should make for some great competition and a season's worth of entertainment for sure.
One of the boys on the basketball team, we were driving to Monroe, Louisiana for the tournament. He's in the back of the truck. He's like, "Oh, I set my fantasy lineup the other day," and I was like, "Are you trolling?" Or like, did you like you really saw that like the Bassmaster collaborated, tagged me in the post or whatever, like goals for 2025, set your fantasy lineup, win your fantasy league, beat Ronnie Moore. And so they saw it and they made a team and he was like, "Yeah, I got in bucket E Dakota E Bear." And I was like, or he said, "Dakota, how do you say that?" And I was like, "E Bear." I was like, that's a pretty dang good pick. Like you don't know, but that's a good team, overall. Like it's funny. And so it's cool to see, yeah, the names that are popping into the elites and then who maybe plays fantasy because we all love fantasy sports, but doesn't necessarily know the game like we know it, and they'll get exposed to it. So that's great. Tell me about Bo, man. You're just like when Jake Whitaker qualified for the Elite Series, we were best friends, and I would say we were best friends. We were very close, and so I got to kind of explain to him what it was going to be like and answer any questions along the way, things like that. Bo knows what it's going to be like because his dad, for years, he's been at plenty of Elite Series events without competing in them. But now that he's done it, he's sampled the opens quite a bit as a co and then a little bit as a boater. And then this year was his first full season of doing them. So, what conversations have those been like? And then Easton Fothergill, obviously, his schoolmate at Montevallo. You've obviously gotten close with him as well, just based on proximity.
Yeah, I mean, neither of those guys, there's not a whole lot you have to tell them. Starting with Bo, obviously, to your point, I mean, it's been his life for his entire life. And obviously, this will be the first year he's fishing the Elite Series, but his dad obviously has fished at a professional level for his entire life and even beyond that. So, I mean, he grew up around it. There's not a whole lot I have to tell him. I think the one message I had to both of them was like, it was just such a bizarre time. You know, the the EQ guys qualified through the opens, and then it was just like a month or two worth of just a lot of negativity. And what I told
We
both those
talked
guys,
about it with
like,
Emil, me and you did in the park in
yeah,
his driveway.
100%. And what I told them both was like, you know, don't stress out about this. Like it's all going to work out the way it should. And like, don't let this take away from your joy of accomplishing a lifelong goal. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's why you did it. It's not like something, you don't stumble into that. You don't stumble into being a Bassmaster Elite Series pro. That's not how it works. And I made, abundantly clear to both of those guys just to enjoy it and don't, drown in the negativity because it's not gonna do you any good. I mean, like again, to accomplish that goal takes great sacrifice and a lot of time and a ton of effort. So I was like, just cherish it and just look forward to it because there's no reason to look forward to it now less than you did before. And a lot of the things we're talking about obviously have kind of gone away. And I think the closer we get to the season, people are just excited to get back after it. So I'm not trying to bring up issues and certain times and things that don't need to be brought up now. At least in my mind, they don't. Like I'm just ready to get going.
Be
But at the
careful
time,
who's in your circle because
but
negativity brings you down on the road if you're, yeah.
And I just, yeah, that's just what I told him. I just told him to enjoy it and, don't let him lose sight of the goal and what you're trying to do. Because I mean, at the end of the day, that's the most important part. And, just trying to, instill into their brain also, like it's your career. So like every aspect of it, you have to take very seriously, whether it be, you know, outside media wanting things, doing this, doing that. Like it's a whole thing. But like I said, both those guys are so smart and they don't need my guidance at all, but it's just been fun to get to see them both qualify and then at the same time traveling the road together during the opens, then being roommates at Montevallo, being such good friends through that whole process and getting to see that was really cool just as a story in general, regardless if they were my friends or not. And then getting to see them do that, and then that last tournament, Bo obviously makes it in,
Whew.
and
What a
and I was
strong
there.
finish too, because
Yeah,
because
100%.
a lot of it was a struggle, but it seemed like it was easy for him, and he was just positive. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Everyone else was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna.
And I've got to experience that so many times with Bo fishing tournaments with him that like that was not surprising for me to see. I just think that a lot of the rest of the world got to see like he's definitely got that professional mentality of like, an average tournament angler, if you're not catching them within the first 4 hours of the day, you might as well stick a fork in it because it's like, that's a very hard thing to do mentally, just like it is in any sport. Like when things are not going well, like it's hard to right the ship mentally and be able to overcome that. But you definitely got to see that on display. And like I said, it was not surprising for me to see because I've experienced it with them just fishing team tournaments in Arkansas and everything for so long that it was not surprising, but it was certainly entertaining to watch. And like I said, both those guys qualifying at the same time and being I was there, covering the tournament at Lake Martin and just seeing the joy on both those guys' face. And I remember saying this to both of them, like they were both parked next to each other. And at this point, I didn't mind saying this because it was like, they both had qualified, but I looked at them and I said, what if Bo didn't qualify? Because like, how bad would this suck for you guys? Because like Easton had just a remarkable like record-setting basically year on the opens for what all he did. And I was like, and then Bo at times was so solid, and then had a couple not so great events, and then stormed back towards the end of the year. And I was just thinking, I was like for you two individually, how bad would it suck if Bo didn't qualify? Because it's like you got to go through a whole nother year of this, and then the next year he'd be on his own because Easton would have already moved on. So like the good thing they had going would have been down the drain in a way. It'd been much different anyways. So it was just such a relieving moment for them. You could just tell on their face they were just so happy that they were able to do it together and
Did
both through at the same time.
I did text Easton yesterday and said, "Aren't you glad you don't have to fish the college series and the opens this year? Like both of them canceled day one or postponed day one, however you want to phrase it. 20-mile-an-hour winds, sideways rain, and cold in Florida. You got snow and ice in Clarkston. Aren't you glad you don't have?" He said, "You have no idea how glad."
Yeah.
And
Can
kudos
you
to both of
imagine if
them. Like they both also went from fishing in a certain rig last year to getting their own deals as grown-ups, you could say. You know what I'm saying? Like you're now no longer college kids. You graduated last year. You now qualified, and now you have your first, you know, out of college sponsorship with Easton going Skeeter Yamaha, and then obviously Bo moving over to Ranger Mercury, and so he was with Mercury already, but. Uh, Good for them. And I'll say this, looking at the nine, we know the Cody Myers, the Dakota E-Bears of the world. I will not do the mistake I did last year. I knew about Wesley Gore, but I didn't talk about Wesley Gore a bunch. I knew very little of Robert G, and I kind of glossed over his name. That fourth, fifth, sixth in the points, Paul Marks, Emil Wagner, Andrew Loberg, they're not sliding by me this year. I know those guys way too well. I have way too high expectations for them. And so you can't slide under the radar. This group of guys will not slide under the radar for me because I know what they're good at. Honestly, Kyle, I put it in a preview deal that's going to pop up soon. I think I don't know when you're posting it. I think 5 of our 9 opens anglers could make the final day at Lake Hartwell with how
yeah,
good their skill. Like
yeah.
Easton calls it his favorite lake. Paul Marks,
Yeah.
Tucker Smith, Emil Wagner. You could see an Evan Kung, Bo Brownie, Dakota Ebear, any of those, Loberg. That's it. That's a style of fishery that should suit him well. Like there, you just don't. Cody Meyer, like
And
the
what
whole. What if
Ronnie is
what if
alluding
9 of the rookies made the top 10 at Hartwell? Like all 9.
and what you're alluding to with the story is we made a piece for Bassmaster.com predicting each of the rookies' top elite finish, which was really challenging to do because to Ronnie's point, you look at Lake Hartwell and it suits so many of those guys so well, being that you've got two linear hammers, like two of the best on that lake, and then so many other guys that profile well for that lake or have done well on that lake that it was challenging to spread the love around a little bit there, but that's a really fun piece that like Ronnie said should be coming out on bassmaster.com sometime this weekend or early next week. So I'm excited to see
By the time the next
people to
podcast
see
comes out,
how
yes.
wrong we end up being because I'm sure that's exactly what's going to happen.
And I didn't even listen. I did it differently. We have 9 events and the classic, and we have 10 first-year guys. So I just picked who I thought would finish highest in each event, and made sure that all of them were represented. And I already know I'm going to get the classic right because I picked the only guy out of the 10 anglers that's in the
You're the
classic. So
only
I got that
person
one.
Yeah, the only person between me, you, and Christopher Decker that chose the classic because it wasn't even an option, but
It
it's still
wasn't.
in.
It's in there. Um, awesome. Well, man, fantasy fishing and the new Bassmaster Power Hour or whatever we're calling it. Tell us about those two things before we sign off.
You'd have to tell me about the power hour. I'm not even sure what that is.
It says
Uh,
here in your list that you said tease the new fantasy game and tease the new podcast. So I'm just saying all the podcasts
oh
together.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's the power
Podcast.
hour. It's all,
Podcast. Yeah.
yeah.
So without giving away too many details,
Well,
it's definitely
tell us the fantasy game first.
yeah, okay. Well, again, without giving away too many details. So,
We've got
um,
Rapala and we've got Drain the Lake. That's the same, right?
yeah, so Rapala and Drain the Lake, Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing, and then Falcon Rods Drain the Lake Challenge are still staying the same. But we are introducing a third game this year. I wish I could just give away all the details. By the next time we have a podcast, we can give away more details. And it's going to be
Because
such a
we'll have
fun
the
thing.
boss with us. We can do what
Yeah,
we
yeah, we can
want.
talk about it straight up. Yeah. And the new game's going to be super simple to play. It's going to be super easy, but it's going to be really intriguing. Like everything is going to make sense, and there's going to be justifications for um, you know, the way that it's set up. I can't even word it without giving it
I
away.
don't even. You
But
think
it's so it
I'm
is
nowhere closer to knowing.
it is a ton of fun. I really do think it's going to be a blast to play. It's going to be I can tease that. I think it's going to be doused in a little bit during Bassmaster Live and some of the things we've got coming there as well, because it is a very trackable game, something that's going to be fun. And I just keep using the same words because I don't know how to describe this without just saying what it is.
Fun,
But
unique,
like I said,
interesting
the most
fantasy fishing.
I'm just excited for it to come out because it's been a lot of work and a lot of effort this off season. Again, I keep using that word off season. There's really no such thing.
The
But it's been
time between seasons.
yeah,
Yeah.
between the last elite and now, and it's been quite the process, but it's been a lot of joy to do it because it is something I do think will be fun to play and participants will have a good time. And frankly, like probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most is it's going to provide so much good content for us to create off of the game and talk about that should be a fun new part of the podcast, should be a lot of new content on bassmaster.com. So that's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and say that's going to end up happening within a week and a half. We'll say a week, really, I think is probably the reality, but we'll give
So we
a
can
couple extra
probably
days.
talk about it on the next episode, and then the next episode after that, it's open to create
It
whatever.
might be open by the time we have the next podcast.
Okay. Okay.
Might be, might be. And
And now
then
tell us about I'm sitting across the studio from the best voice in outdoor sports, which now I can say I never thought I'd call Tommy Sanders a podcaster, but he is now in 2025 a podcaster. Is that right, Kyle?
that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing Tommy's going to be a part of a podcast, and yeah, I don't even know really what we're allowed to say as far as that's concerned because it's not been officially announced, but it's going to happen. I can
Oh, there's
certainly
other podcasts out here that have announced complete details without permission. Don't worry.
I am familiar. Um, and I happen to love that other podcast host, so I can't say anything bad about it. But yeah, it's going to be more than just that. I mean, we're going to have multiple new podcasts. There's going to be some great new things coming to bassmaster.com that make those more accessible and make it a better user experience, I think overall. And the people here at Bass have worked entirely I was gonna say too hard, but
Hard enough.
entirely hard.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, incredibly hard just to make it a reality because it's been a process that if you were given an entire year to accomplish, it would be hard to do. But we've been, basically been working on it for like 2 months and I think we're in a good spot for it to come together. And again, it's going to be something that user experience on the website is going to be upgraded
It's
and the new
already like I
podcast.
can open Bassmaster and like videos start playing in the top corner where it was used to just be a still image. Like that's already new.
For sure. That's something we've already started sprinkling out there. And what's to come is even better than that, I believe. So, a lot of new things going to be happening. We've already talked about all the new things that have been announced. There's all sorts of new stuff we haven't even like dropped yet. So, like, I mean, new
That's why
additions
we
to
don't want
live.
January tournaments, guys, because we still have 3 weeks to figure out all the new stuff before the elite starts. So that's what. But these new podcasts that you're alluding to, there should be other than ours, there should be two more types of podcasts, And what's good about that is burnout is real. I talked about it. I mean, we started shooting this at 1:30. At about 12:30, I'm sitting there eating lunch like, man, I really don't want to shoot this thing. Like I'm just tired. I'm just burnt out. I'm just tired.
No
And
offense, because I didn't want to either.
you're texting me, what time, bud? And I was like, don't talk to me like that, bud. I don't want to do that. What are you making me do? And so what's good is that we'll have three podcasts type of deals. Some short forms, some long forms, some better than ours, some they're all better than ours, whatever. And
We don't want to talk about
and
it.
it'll be good that we don't have to do one every single week. We'll
Yeah,
be
sure.
able to space ours out with new substance, new content, energy. Our schedule is sometimes so busy. Like I should be doing steel timber sports and air races right now, but I'm doing a podcast with you. And um, so that'll be good is on those really busy weeks, save it and we'll do it next week because we've got one already airing this week type of thing. So more content to come. Just created if you could do me a favor, I know if you've made it this far in the podcast, you're a fan of the show. Um, go like go subscribe to the new Bassmaster YouTube that we fired up. Bassmaster bonus. I can drop a deal above. Um, Go subscribe to that because that is where we've got so much content. I put up like 800 videos a year, um, at least 800 to 900 videos a year on our YouTube channel. Sometimes we have so much content to put out in such a short amount of time that, especially during tournaments, that it steps on each other. We don't get to highlight the content as much as we want. Fans don't know what to watch. And so trying to segment and put some of the content elsewhere where they have 150, 200 videos go there. We can let our content live and breathe on the Bassmaster, the main one. So go subscribe to that one and stay up to date on all the weigh-ins and other moments that we don't get to showcase. And instead of them going in the trash can, they get to go somewhere, Kyle. So yeah, appreciate y'all. And Kyle, yeah, we will see you next week with our special guest, Chase Anderson. So I got to say whatever I wanted now, so I can mind my P's and Q's next week, and I got it. You got it in my system, right?
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Awesome. Well, glad to be back. Even if, hey, I'm just venting, just straight up talking to y'all the way I would if me and Kyle were just in the room hanging out. Um, but in all sincerity, good to be back. I love tournament bass fishing season way more than the off season because the off season we get bored and we just start asking fans questions for no reason, what their thoughts are. We start asking people who will never fish bass tournaments what their thoughts are. Doesn't matter. And now we get to talk about tournaments and cover the game. So Saturday, final day at Clarks Hill, we'll be doing Bassmaster Live. Such, myself, and Brandon Cobb will be the 3 men at the desk, and we will do 6 hours of Clarks Hill to see possibly who wins it. But with the full field fishing, not quite sure who's going to be the winner at Clarks Hill. But until then, next time with Chase Anderson, we'll see you on the Inside Bassmaster Podcast.